All rise. The Honorable Judge Merlin now presiding. Court is now in session. You may be seated.
Welcome, jurors. You made it through the jury selection process and have been selected to serve on case 8008135, the People vs. Fossil Fuels. In this case, you will be deciding based on the evidence brought before you in this courtroom whether or not the defendant has willfully caused serious harm to the people. The specific charge is willful cause of serious harm by contributing to climate change. And for the benefits of the jury's knowledge, the defendant has already been convicted on charges of willful cause of serious harm by contributing to poor air quality. If convicted on this additional charge, the maximum sentence carries a penalty of life in banishment. The prosecutors in this case are the federal government, represented by attorney Ben Dover, and the defense will be represented by attorney Terry Aki. Does the prosecution have any comments or motions before we begin this trial?
Your Honor, I prefer Benjamin Dover, and we are ready to proceed.
Does the defense have any comments or motions before this court so that we may commence trial?
Yes, Your Honor, we have filed a motion to dismiss based on the grounds that the case brought against our client lacks merit. Fossil fuels were deployed to improve the quality of life for people across the planet, bringing them out of poverty and giving them a chance to live a life worth living. The benefits of energy extracted from fossil fuels dramatically outweigh any alleged byproducts involved in their production. Your Honor, while the energy produced from fossil fuels has benefited some communities, we now have reliable measurements on the cost of its production in terms of human life, indicating the consequences significantly outweigh the benefits. We also now have the technology to adapt our energy infrastructure and prevent the destruction of our planet. Climate change, influenced by fossil fuels, which the defense does not even deny, is an imminent and existential threat to you, the jury, and everyone else.
I appreciate your concern for my health, Mr. Dover, but please do not use me in your arguments. However, after reviewing the facts submitted in the file and the counter arguments thereto, I have decided to reject the motion to dismiss, and this case will continue to trial. The prosecution may proceed with opening arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'd like to start by defining climate change. Climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperature and atmospheric composition caused by the burning of fossil fuels. Objection, misleading. Climate change is the long-term shift in temperatures and atmospheric composition due to chemical and physical changes of the environment. Now, fossil fuels might be a contributor, but it is certainly not the only, as natural life cycles play a crucial role.
Sustained. The prosecution will refine their definition for the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. Climate change refers to the long-term shift in temperatures and atmospheric composition, partly caused by fossil fuel as well as natural processes. We have submitted into discovery, Your Honor, the best case scenario for the change in average global temperature by 2100, according to our global scientific institutions, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also referred to as IPCC, and peer review studies. If I point your attention to the chart over here, you will see the average global temperature is expected to increase by at least 2 degrees Fahrenheit, but it could be as high as 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Each line is called a socioeconomic pathway that delineates between different scenarios based on a multitude of factors, such as the rate of emissions, population growth, economic growth, etc. The defense will be very quick to point out uncertainty in our models, but unfortunately that uncertainty resides in the fact that the worst case scenario might be the most likely scenario. If you are still unsure about the models, here's a graph of simulated levels versus observed levels in the past. As you can see, the line is quite snug to the observed levels we have seen in the past, indicating our models are quite reliable. The physics are clear. Here is a chart of the past 800,000 years and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As you can see, CO2, the molecule that prevents heat of various wavelengths from being emitted into space, which acts like a forcing that warms surface temperatures, commonly referred to as the greenhouse gas effect. We can see that we are in unprecedented levels within the last 1 million years. The recent rise in average global temperatures the past few decades is a faster rise in temperatures than any time in the past 2,000 years. We can see that with this chart. Given our current understanding of the natural processes, this rapid rise in temperatures would not be possible without the defendant. Well, you might ask, so what does that mean? Well, it means that sea level rise should be in line with the level of warming, and we should see an increase in ocean acidification. In fact, during warming periods in the past, the sea level has risen 10 feet in a 100-year period, just indicating how fast sea levels really can rise. Here's a chart submitted into evidence showing that estimates for sea level rise will be between 1 to 3 feet by 2100, rising faster than any time in the past 6,000 years. And we do not even need to rely on estimates, as sea level rise will be at least 1 foot due to thermal expansion of the oceans thanks to the burning of fossil fuels that has already occurred. Globally, 8 of the 10 largest cities are near coastlines. Knowing this and how fast sea level can rise, do we want to continue to warm the climate? If we do, it will result in refugees, starvation, wars, fighting, and a lot of untimely deaths. Objection, speculation. Even if the sea level rises and the climate warms, there are scenarios where none of those deadly outcomes occur. And if they do, we cannot create a causal link. My client cannot be held responsible for preventable. Your Honor, we believe these future deaths are attributable to actions the defendant has already taken.
Sustained. The jury will disregard the comments about hypothetical wars, starvation, violence, and death, and it shall be struck from the record.
According to a study from the National Academy of the Sciences, in excess of roughly 3.6 million people die from particulate matter or aerosols, which harm our respiratory and other biological systems as it's released into the air and we breathe it in. Here is a graph breaking down just how many deaths sorted out by country. There are other studies with even higher estimates, but we chose the most conservative. Even with the conservative estimate, nearly 150 million people could die from outdoor air pollution caused by fossil fuels over the next 80 years if we do nothing about it. Objection, Your Honor. Defendant has already been tried on matters relating to particulates and air pollution.
Sustained. Mr. Dover, you're really pushing my buttons. The jury will disregard any matters relating to particulates and air quality, resulting in poor health and death for the people.
Your Honor, we rest our opening arguments. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we will take a short recess, and then the defense will present their opening arguments. All right? All right. Welcome back, everybody. I understand that you may have heard that Russia has invaded Ukraine, and it may concern you and your family. And this courtroom will let you know if there is an urgent and pressing matter regarding developments on that side of the world. But I please ask the jury and everybody else to remain focused on the merits of this case and try not to be distracted, okay? The defense may now begin with opening arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to the jury. The prosecution made the claim that we are seeing a more rapid rise of global temperatures faster than any time in the past 2,000 years. However, this rate of temperature increase is not unprecedented and has occurred during interglacial periods tens of thousands of years ago, before there was any burning of fossil fuels. This means natural variability can create time periods with accelerated warming and cooling, regardless of what the humans, ourselves, or the defendant is doing. In fact, here is a graph of global temperatures going back 500 million years. We do not know the extent to which fossil fuel emissions have contributed to the slight warming we've observed recently, and how much is a result of natural processes. It is well documented that the planet moves through natural cycles of warming and cooling, so to attribute all of the warming to fossil fuels, I think, is reckless. The average global temperature since 1880 has increased 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and the quality of life over that time period has only improved, and it's improved dramatically. Would you rather live now or in 1880 when the global average temperature was lower? It turns out a warmer climate is more conducive to human flourishing. In fact, we have submitted evidence to the court indicating that record low temperatures have decreased over the past century, and record high temperatures have actually begin to level off. This is hinting at a much more mild climate, and one that has a less extreme cold, but not necessarily more extreme heat. And the prosecution is wise in avoiding any economic arguments or extreme weather points, because neither are predictable. In addition to being unpredictable, the historic significance of such events paints a much different picture about a world that uses fossil fuels. Number one, there is no clear trend identified by scientists of increased intensity or frequency of hurricanes. In fact, the frequency of hurricanes globally has actually gone down over the past year or two. We have improved radar technology, and we have dedicated storm chasers who make identifying weak tornadoes, specifically EF0 tornadoes, much more possible. Another phenomenon that has caused concern and even panic is wildfires. But according to this chart here, we can see that in fact, the amount of surface area burned globally has actually decreased since 2003. In addition, the cost of extreme weather events as a percentage of GDP has remained flat or decreased because society is wealthier thanks to the use of our defendant. Global gross domestic product, in fact, has increased fourfold since 1970. Top all that off with the fact that the cost of extreme weather events, in terms of human life, that's what we're here for on this case, has in fact decreased over the past century. Natural disasters are responsible for 0.1% of global deaths. That's not exactly topping the lists of most pressing concerns. Climate change is not even a top 5 lethal environmental problem on an annual basis. Indoor air pollution accounts for roughly 2.3 million deaths. Poor sanitation and unsafe drinking water account for nearly 830,000 deaths a year. Lead poisoning, roughly 900,000 deaths a year. All of these have a much greater toll in terms of human life than climate change has. And the biggest leader is poverty, which kills an estimated 18 million people a year. I'd like to thank the prosecution for pointing out that sea levels have risen in the past. Currently, there's no clear evidence suggesting sea level rise is accelerating or unusual in the proper historical context. If I turn the jury's attention to this graph here, we can see that the current sea level is not unprecedented, and it has hit current levels on intervals of about every 100,000 years. Lastly, the prosecution claims that we have the technology to replace fossil fuels completely. The truth is we do not. Not only can solar and wind not function when there isn't wind or sunlight, but we do not have the scalable battery technology to properly fulfill energy demands across the globe. Currently, fossil fuels and biomass make up 90% of all energy production in the world. It is simply not feasible to quickly replace this kind of infrastructure without completely overrunning and overwhelming communities. Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to the jury. We would like to rest our opening arguments. Your Honor, the defense would like to call climate model expert Jimmy Herlocker to the stand.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. This is quite the luxury courtroom. Got the wooden pews, the white border. It's a very nice architecture. What are you wearing?
What can you tell us about the reliability of climate models?
We use very complicated modeling techniques to simulate likely future scenarios based on inputs and assumptions that we make. The inputs are derived from physical measurements that we make over some period of time, while the assumptions such as global emissions or population and economic growth require us to project multiple scenarios. The models are the best tools we have to guide policymakers on the most likely scenario or the most likely of outcomes based on policy decisions. But they are not guaranteed to occur. Even the most likely case may not happen if there's a variable the model could not control for, such as a massive volcanic eruption or an asteroid impact, or even an unexpected change to our sun, which is why we have decided to use an average outcome from hundreds of different simulations.
So are you saying that some unforeseen event could invalidate a climate model's prediction?
Yes.
Would you say in the past climate models have been egregiously incorrect?
I'm not sure how you would define egregiously, but some models are better than others, and there has not been enough time to validate or invalidate many of our models. However, we have improved technology that's able to gather much more high quality data. And combine that with our refined techniques for modeling, and our predictive power has improved dramatically.
Are you acknowledging that lack of historical data or poor quality data in the past makes our models unreliable?
Yes.
Are you acknowledging that poor historical data, or lack thereof in some cases, undermines our ability to reliably model and predict? Objection, Your Honor.
No.
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Is it fair to say that climate change, which is a multivariate problem, is so complex that we cannot possibly measure all the necessary components, and in the past we certainly didn't have the capability or wherewithal to do it? that we can reliably predict any future outcome?
It is fair to say that the complexity involved in fully understanding all of the physics and chemistry of our planet, as well as obtaining adequate and reliable measurements, is a daunting task. But we can do quite a bit through our improved technology and higher quality observations to make informed projections by averaging the results from many different models. As is the case with medicine and other scientific disciplines, we can simplify a complex system down into a basic understanding that matches what we observe, even if we do not know the exact details of all of the mechanisms.
But you cannot possibly control for all of the variables that interact with the system you're studying and the combination of all of the different interactions, could you?
No.
Is it true that even our models that are used to make policy decisions were unable to correctly predict the warming of the early 20th century?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Would the prosecution like to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. So there's not just one model that the IPCC has created, but there are multiple scenarios based on the data sets with different assumptions, correct?
Correct. Our models cover the entire range of possibilities, and different public policy decisions will make one outcome more likely than another, even if we don't know every underlying detail, as I explained to the guy in the red tie.
So if we reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we release into the environment, our models suggest that global warming will decrease and the effects of that global warming would be negated.
Correct, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. We will begin today with closing arguments, starting with Councilman Dover. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have a responsibility to not only protect ourselves, but to protect our planet, for everybody to live a healthy life for as long as possible. And in order to achieve this, we need to protect ourselves from the defendant. Once the defendant releases all of its carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, we cannot just pull it and take it out of the atmosphere. It stays there, it lingers, it hangs out for hundreds of years. When the climate conditions worsen, there will be unforeseen unrest. There will be more deaths. And toxic air will take many more lives than it already has. This will create a non-linear feedback loop that will exacerbate the issue in a way we can't possibly imagine. It will do this by amplifying the impacts that we've already made, and if we do nothing about it now, it will amplify the impacts that we will continue to make in the future. If we let the defendant go unpunished and continue, the human species will not be able to adapt. We will no longer prosper. Our planet will be destroyed, and we can't just sit around and let that happen. We must act, and we must do it now, even if our models aren't 100% certain. Because if they are correct, it will be too late. It will be too late. Thank you, Your Honor. We rest our case.
Councilman Aki, are you ready to begin on closing arguments?
Thank you, Your Honor. Jury. The interplay between all the systems involved in climate change, along with inadequate and insufficient data over a long period of time, means we cannot reliably say how much fossil fuels have contributed or will contribute to climate change. We cannot say how warm the planet will become or how it will impact human beings with any reliable degree of certainty. In fact, we have presented evidence in our opening arguments suggesting that global warming has in fact benefited humanity. Therefore, we cannot say that our defendant has caused serious harm to the people. What we can say is that the quality of life of the people over the past 2 centuries has improved tremendously. And the benefactor of the energy produced by our defendant is unmatched in human history. You cannot convict our client for doing good things and creating tremendous wealth for so many people and improving the quality of their life like never before. How can you convict somebody on that? Your Honor, we rest our case.
We, the jury, find the defendant on charges of willfully causing serious harm to the people by contributing to climate change, not guilty. We believe the prosecution did not meet the burden of proof.
How do you explain that verdict, Mr. Dover? I couldn't believe it.
Well, we're happy about the conviction on toxic air, and I think the outcome is premature regarding climate change. We brought the case before many of our models have been validated, but if we wait, it will be too late. This fight is far from over, though, and we will do whatever it takes to protect the planet, and in turn, our species.